Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We begin with breaking news in the politics lead and what aides are describing as a darker than normal cloud hovering over the Oval Office. A White House official saying of President Trump, quote, "He's pissed at damn near everyone," unquote. With Democrats having recaptured the House and the Mueller noose presumably tightening, few Trump aides feel any sense of job security these days. The president today confirming what many have speculated, he's looking to make major changes. The two at the top of his list, apparently, Chief of Staff John Kelly and Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. The president telling a supportive conservative website, The Daily Caller, this afternoon, that he's looking at a lot of options as he contemplates his next purge, but he has not yet made a decision. This, as CNN is learning from White House sources about the president's intense and bitter mood, which escalated after the midterms with stumbles during his trip abroad, including that no-show at the World War I Armistice Centennial Ceremony, punctuated yesterday by the First Lady calling for a top national security advisor to be fired. President Trump himself caught off guard, sources telling us, and feeling backed into a corner. CNN's Caitlin Collins is at the White House for us. Caitlin, you're learning these extraordinary new details, including that President Trump was furious over the First Lady's move yesterday, thinking it made him look like a bossed-around husband.
That's right, Jake. That's what the president is saying, because he feels that these aides who don't report to him have thrust this internal staffing matter into public view, and it has dominated headlines now, something the president doesn't like. And he also feels that by this statement coming out calling for the firing of a top national security aide, the president feels backed into a corner backed into a corner. And as we know, that is a position that President Trump least likes to be in. The revolving door at the White House is spinning faster tonight, as sources tell CNN a major staff shakeup is on the horizon, and President Trump is growing more isolated by the day. Trump has been in a dark mood since he returned from Paris, berating aides over a decision to cancel a planned visit to a military cemetery due to the rain. But his fury hasn't stopped there. Sources say the president is also weighing several major staffing changes and has his sights set on Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, who traveled to the southern border earlier today.
I want to thank you on behalf of DHS.
Trump telling aides he's made the decision to replace Nielsen, though it's still unclear who with. Nielsen's imminent departure raising questions about the job security of the man who brought her into the White House, Chief of Staff John Kelly, amid whispers he could be replaced by the Vice President's Chief of Staff, Nick Ayers, though some White House officials have threatened to quit if Trump does. And one day after First Lady Melania Trump issued a scathing statement calling for the firing of John Bolton's number 2 on the National Security Council, Mira Ricardel returned to work today, and her fate remains uncertain. Sources say Bolton, who is 10,000 miles away from Washington on a work trip with the vice president in Singapore, is scrambling to save her. And the episode is setting the stage for a showdown between the National Security Advisor and the First Lady, who says she's always been candid with the president.
I give him my honest advice and honest opinions.
But Trump was said to be blindsided by the First Lady's statement Tuesday, feeling backed into a corner and complaining he looks like a bossed-around husband. Whether Ricardel stays or goes will be a test on the limits of Melania's influence and the extent of Bolton's. So, Jake, the president's frayed relationships are essentially being laid bare for everyone to see, not just with John Kelly and Kirstjen Nielsen, but apparently even with his own wife and her staff as well. We haven't seen or heard from the president yet today, but he is scheduled to make an appearance here in the next half hour where he's going to be voicing some support for some bipartisan criminal justice legislation. Jake.
All right, Caitlin Collins at the White House for us. We have a lot to talk about here. Ryan, even in a White House that has been known to have chaotic days, this seems a little extraordinary.
There's a lot going on. I mean, it's not unusual for a White House to make major staffing changes after a shellacking in the midterms, right? In 1994, President Clinton made a lot of changes after that loss. 2006, Bush made a lot of changes. 2010, Obama made a lot of changes. What is unusual about this White House is everything is sort of battled out in public, right? So you have the First Lady tweeting about staffing changes, right? You have the president in these sort of stream of conscious press encounters talking about it. So I think it's maybe a little bit more than those other examples, but also the Trump White House he governs in a very chaotic style, and everything is for public consumption. I mean, he lets people twist in the wind like Kelly has for months now, and there's just not an orderly process that you would normally find after a big midterm loss for staffing changes.
Simone, what do you make of Caitlin Collins reporting that President Trump really didn't like what happened yesterday with the First Lady calling for this Deputy National Security Advisor to be fired because it made him look like a bossed-around husband? The woman, the Deputy National Security Advisor, is still at work today, apparently.
Look, I don't like, I'm not married and I don't have a boyfriend, Jake, and I don't like to, if I did, I don't want people in my business. And so I would hope that the president and the first lady could work out their, home business at home. But unfortunately, the first lady has drug us into a spat with her husband. That's exactly what this is, and frankly, I don't want any parts of it.
Well, you tell us, because you know personally a lot of these players. You ran the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania. What's going on here?
Yeah, look, I don't have a clear picture of what's going on. It's not unusual, like you've seen and has been reported, for first ladies to be involved in personnel decisions, right? Obviously, in the Reagan administration, Nancy Reagan.
It's behind the scenes, too.
Yeah, well, behind the scenes to a certain extent. I mean, behind
it
the
leaked
scenes,
out, apparently.
Yeah, leaked out.
She wasn't active on Twitter.
Well, Twitter didn't exist, right? I mean, it's a different world. That can you imagine the Kennedy administration or lots of other administrations with the news cycle and the media onslaught that we have today would be laid bare. Look, it's not a good look, right, to have this kind of played out in public. I'm not quite certain as to what's happening and how it's going to end up. The reporting is that Mayor Ricardo is still at the White House and maybe moved to a different spot. And so, if that's the goal, it probably should be done kind of behind the scenes and as a subtle personnel move. But we'll wait and see. This president, there is no lack of transparency, right? No one ever says, "Tell us what you're thinking, what's on your mind." You get to find out, and so we find out. So hopefully we'll see. And again, like John Kelly's been around for a long time. He's been on the chopping block many, many times, right?
Right. But the reason the story keeps getting fed is because President Trump keeps asking people who would be a good replacement, who should I have as chief of staff. President Trump also today in that interview with the Daily Caller lashing out at how elections take place in this country. He blamed Republican losses on this fantastic, in the true meaning of the word fantastic, unbelievable, nonsensical story. He told the Daily Caller, the Republicans don't win, and that's because of potentially illegal votes when people get in line that have absolutely no right to vote, and they go around in circles. Sometimes they go to their car, put on a different hat, put on a different shirt, come in and vote again. Nobody takes anything. It's really a disgrace what's going on. To be very clear, and I just want to make sure everybody at home understands, there's no evidence to that story. It's a fever dream. It's like it never happened. There aren't people who are not allowed to vote putting on different shirts and running around in different cars so that they can vote. And yet, this is from the President of the United States.
Yeah, and it's an echo of what we've heard before. I mean, we know that the president is a conspiracy theorist, right? He was a birther for a time. He came into the White House citing another conspiracy theory, this idea that 3 million people voted illegally. I think that's
a lot of hats and shirts.
Yeah, he's suggesting, I guess, they were also illegal. It's also this idea that, do people want to vote that badly? If they did, I think our participation rate would be much higher. It's not. But yeah, I think the thing when you look at the circumstances that have happened over these last couple of days and the fury that it's in, it's not clear that it's going to end. It seems like this might be a preview of what we're going to see for these next 2 to 6 years, however long he's in the White House. Because if you think about it, legislation, that whole process isn't going to get any better. There's going to be sort of more gridlock. You've got the House now in the hands of Democrats with Nancy Pelosi, presumably going to be the Speaker of the House. As you said, the Mueller investigation, at some point it'll end, but it probably won't be good news for this president. The staffing problems, he'll bring new people in, but at some point he's going to be calling around to replace those people and get in a fury with those folks. So that's what I think is troubling. For the next couple of years, he's going to be brooding in this way in a job he really hasn't quite got the hang of and also doesn't really seem to enjoy.
Simone, I want to read one more quote just because I really want to know what you think about this. He was talking about the need for a voter ID, and the president said, if you buy a box of cereal, you have a voter ID. Then they try to shame everybody by calling them racist or calling them anything they can think of when you say you want voter ID. But voter ID is a very important thing. Do you know what he's talking about with the box
I'm really
of
not
cereal?
sure because I buy cereal, Jake, and I don't have to present. I don't have to present ID to buy my cereal from the local Harris Teeter.
Box of wine, but
box
not a
of
box of
wine,
cereal.
probably. You know, my little Vue Clicquot, but not not my cereal. This is an issue. I do not think the president understands the gravity of his words. To be clear, voter ID laws that require exact match. These are things that have been put in place. Getting rid of same-day voter registration. These are things that are put in place to disenfranchise and curb access to the ballot box. And these are things that have overwhelmingly been put in place by Republican state legislators across the country. That is a fact. I work on these issues, so I can say that.
Look, there's obviously a big disagreement about this, right? There's about, you get IDs for lots of other things in the world, where you get an ID on a plane. Look, voting needs to be reformed in America. I said this last night. It's a shame that you can go put $100,000 in an ATM and transfer it anywhere in the world, or $10. Everybody in the world relies on their banking system. It doesn't get hacked. It's very instantaneous. Yet we have this voting system that's like out of like horse and buggy, right? And there should be IDs. You should be able to go to vote, get it done. Everybody knows within minutes.